Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 126, recorded on July 14th, 2021. The Cloud Pod gives Amazon money in advance. Good evening, Ryan, Matthew, and Sarah. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi there.
We have a weird travel week this week with Peter out. I'm actually in Utah this week. Ryan's around at his house where he never leaves.
I never leave.
Jonathan's still on vacation, so we had to kind of fill in the void here for recording. So we grabbed Sarah, we grabbed Matt because they wanted to do a happy hour. So welcome to the happy hour where we're going to do the Cloud Pod instead.
Surprise! Happy hour's the Cloud Pod.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. We'll get through it together as friends, or maybe not friends at the end. I don't know. We'll see. For those of you who know, Amazon has a new CEO as of last week. Adam Slipsky, who was former CEO of Tableau, has joined. And there's been a couple of interesting articles in the information about the bureaucracy of AWS. And apparently, since he left in 2016 to join Tableau, the bureaucracy has only increased with new salespeople and sales leadership, including Greg Pearson, forcing the teams to write very large papers and documents and QBRs. And I've actually heard this from some of our sales reps in the past too, that there's a lot of documentation required in bureaucracy, even though they don't get billed or paid on, what you sell or buy on Amazon Web Services. Amazon still is trying to predict and kind of understand what's going on. And so that's what Adam is inheriting. And the question is going to be, what does he kind of bring back from Tableau and bring back to AWS? So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens the next few weeks. It's been pretty quiet since Slipsky started. I suspect we won't hear much from him until maybe even reInvent. But maybe we'll see something a little earlier than that. Only time will tell.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we heard anything, this year even. A lot of these things take the, just monumental timescales to actually achieve and see fruition where they're talked about publicly. Internally, they'll see it much, maybe by the end of the year, they'll start seeing stuff. But it'll be interesting. A lot of that culture of working backwards and that has led to a lot of those bureaucratic processes. And so it's interesting to see what they'll keep and what they'll change.
Yeah. I've actually been reading the Working Backwards book from some former Amazon employees who work for Jeff. And it's interesting because, they have their opinions about how they see things. And so, bureaucracy is definitely not something Amazon's really big on. But, as a company gets so big and to the scale of employees that Amazon has, it starts getting more difficult to keep order. Even more so than it was, when there are 20,000 employees and hundreds of thousands of employees. It's a big problem.
Communication's hard.
Yeah, anyone at that scale is going to have processes everywhere. And, I have a few friends that have started at Amazon over the last couple of years, and hearing about the differences of these people starting versus my friends that started even back in 2011, they're like, the processes around onboarding or getting access or doing anything along those lines is weeks long versus the days that it used to be.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a solutions architect. 6 months before he could even talk to a customer, and had to get a bunch of certifications and training done. It's kind of crazy what they go through as new employees before they even start talking to a customer.
Well, they actually have to do, I think it's like 3 rounds of fake meetings with customers before they actually can do a real one. So like your team acts as a customer at different levels, and you have to do like practice at this level, then practice at this level of communication, and then present, based on these problems. And then before you can even actually work with real customers.
I mean, the customers don't listen to the solutions architects anyway, so I'm not sure it really matters. All right. Well, apparently there might be too many cooks in the security kitchen. This great article from darkreading.com, which Sarah brought to our attention. Darkreading.com is a security kind of blog website where you can get all kinds of security news if you're in that space. But apparently, according to a study commissioned by Fastly by ESG Research, nearly half of all daily security alerts are false positives, according to the research. And most organizations spend an equal amount of time on false positives as on legitimate attacks. And that's a crazy amount of wasted resources and time. And that might be driven by the fact that organizations on average apparently are using 11 web app and API security tools, and they spend $2.6 million on them each year. That's quite a bit of security tools. I've actually been in companies that have had even more than that, some that have been less. But there's always seems to be another agent that I need to install on a server at the end of the day. And there is a good quote here from Kelly Shortridge, senior principal at Fastly. What's the point in securing the business if you're just hamstringing its operations? The point is to help them operate safely. And I agree with his intent here, but I do think there's friction for friction's sake, and there's enabling the business securely.
Looks like where we oh, yes, I guess I should say something now.
Here, I'll start you off. Any company I've worked with, being that I've worked with many companies, always have all these security tools. And yeah, while I understand security tools are accurate, the amount of companies I see that install all of them and then they all go to an email list that nobody ever checks, or an inbox that nobody checks, or unsubscribes if it goes to an SNS topic, it just kind of falls by the wayside. And then about 3 years later, somebody goes, why are we paying for this tool that nobody ever looks at the results of?
Yeah. And to add to that too, there are really like two different camps of security folks, right? You've got the first camp that, just loves the shiny new tool, right? It has all the greatest and latest and all the bells and whistles, and it just promises to fix all of your security issues, right? And then, you've got those individuals that just go ahead and, want to sign up and spend the money without actually looking at the security risks or what they're trying to solve, right? They don't actually have a clear picture of those business use cases or those security use cases. They're just trying to solve a quick problem that's been sold to them, versus the other side that actually has those use cases built out so that they know the problem that they're trying to solve and what they're trying to remediate. And at times you get, and I've worked at companies that do this, right? It's the newest, latest, and greatest tool they want installed. And then you have 10, 12, 15, 20 agents installed on either a laptop, a server, whatever have you, and they compete and they fight. And it's really hard to troubleshoot, right? So in the end, they end up turning off most of the agents because it just sucks up resources. And then you have all these false positives, and there's so much time and energy wasted that the security team is really hindered in any progress that they actually make. And actual alerts or potential vulnerabilities or breaches just kind of get tucked in with all of the noise. And it's not until, a much later date and time that something is actually uncovered. So these tools often, I think, cause more issues potentially than they do solve real world problems.
And when they cause issues, they do so much damage to reputation that you can really undermine your security posture and your philosophy and really, alienate key business partners that you need to achieve success. And so it's definitely a struggle for security teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I make my millions, it's going to be selling a tool to orchestrate. Like, it won't be a new security tool. It will be a tool to configure all the existing security tools in a pipeline fashion. And then I'll be sending myself off into space like the rest of the CEOs.
Nice. Ryan in space. That'd be a great show.
One thing that Sarah mentioned that reminds me of monitoring a lot is she was saying that you get a lot of these false positives and then real alerts that nobody ever looks at. And I feel like you can draw that same correlation to monitoring tools, back in the day. Everyone wants a monitoring tool, and there's a fine line, it isn't just one set up these tools and they magically solve your problems. Because if anybody's ever selling you that, it's just not true. Anything you really need to, tune and set up. And it's true with monitoring where you need to adjust your thresholds based on, whatever your current loads are and what you expect, and the same thing with monitoring too. Like, you have to adjust it. Like, GuardDuty, I think in Amazon shows an alert every time I SSH to a box for one of my clients, because they work in a slightly older school manner where they have static boxes that we SSH to. And it shows up as a finding every single time. And it's like, no, that's not a finding. It's real. So we've had to go exclude those things from the alerts. And, these things are true with monitoring too. If you, have certain things that are set up and they get too noisy, you just start ignoring them. And that to me is like a major problem with the way, some of these security tools are set up, is that they're sold as just go install it. And we've magically used, machine learning and AI to solve all your problems and to automatically, dynamically figure out what everything should be. But in reality, they don't know your business use case. Yeah, they might be able to tweak it and adjust it based on whatever algorithms they've created over the years. But, you still need to make them work for your team and your tools and your environment. And without doing that, you're just causing noise and pain and frustration, like Ryan and Sarah have mentioned.
Yeah, alert fatigue, right? Just kind of like patching or vulnerability patching fatigue as well, right? So it's kind of along those same lines.
I would say it's interesting to see, the team is typically the most understaffed, in my opinion, is the security team. And then, if you go from engineering, then there's the cloud organizations or operational organizations. They're typically much smaller than your engineering organization. And then your security team is a fraction of that. And so really all the problems that security is now running into with these alerting and tooling and all that is really the same problem that hit operations several years ago, which, kind of birthplace SRE and DevOps, and really this changed kind of, continuous pipelines and continuous integration. Why there's this notion of DevSecOps out there, I think DevSecOps hasn't really taken off yet because there's so few people who have the bandwidth to even think about how to make this world better. And again, it goes back to the fact these security teams are a fraction of the size of the overall organization, so they're always playing catch up.
I feel like the term I've seen on like job postings that are DevSecOps are like, we install these automated tools in the pipeline and therefore, we do it. Not to me where like a true DevSecOps would be like integrating automated testing in, even just general things like scanning OWASP, top 10, when you do a build, that term DevSecOps to me is just like the new buzz term of like, oh, we want DevSecOps at our company because we'll secure everything if we have this role that's called that.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea there is removing the security problem to the left and, giving exposure to your dev team of these vulnerabilities. But that's probably the most mature part of it. But, there's still an SRE team at most companies that have automated away a lot of the automation parts. And those SRE teams are looking at a different perspective than the old monitoring teams of yesteryear did. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge. Definitely, I think there needs to be some rationalization around these tools. I think there should be ROIs and KPIs and metrics of like, hey, you spend $1 million on a tool. How many false positives did it have? How many positives, did it have? What did it prevent? And what's the ROI on these things? And what's the investment look like in the future? Because I don't think we hold the security vendors accountable enough in many cases. All right. Well, let's move to AWS news for this week. So first up is a problem that if you're familiar with it, you're going to be really happy. And if you're not familiar with this problem because you just use the console, you probably won't care. But basically, if you've ever used the CLI to modify security group rules, you know that is a major nightmare where you have to specify all the rules in very long detail and you can't reference them. And it's a big pain in the butt. Really at the end of the day. And so Amazon's fixing that for us this week with the new security group rule IDs, which are unique in each AWS region. And as part of this, you have added 2 new API actions, including describe security group rules and modify security group rules to the VPC APIs. And the benefit of this new security group rule ID is simplifying your CLI commands. For example, revoking security group egress rules now can be done with a greatly simplified solution, but just specifying the group rule ID itself, which is so much easier. And then the second benefit is for those of us who still run on-premise world infrastructure and maybe have a Bastion host that they want to connect to their Amazon infrastructure, you typically would end up having a rule in all of your security groups to say, allow this specific IP address to connect to my VPC from my on-prem environment. And then when that host ever changed or you built a new one, you had to go actually modify all those security groups, which are hard to find because there's really no way to query that particular security group rules. But now they support tagging of this as well. So as you do your security group rule ID, you can then tag it and say, this is the Bastion IP address. And then you can go search for those and find all the locations where you need to update your code, which is very nice.
Yeah. I remember the first time that I ran into this was trying to import resources into a Terraform state. And you realize just how on the back end security group rules were such a second class citizen as you're trying to import a rule by saying ingress_22, some magic code that you had to decode into port, and then, it was this horribly long string just to identify the single rule. So this is a thing that a lot of people will be eagerly awaiting. I'm really curious to see if you can do things like optimization where you can reference, security group rule many times across multiple security groups. And so really simplify a lot of your ecosystem by having maybe a catalog of rules that you apply selectively.
Or even be able to push down from, a CSP, centralized rules that you want in every security group for, those security tools that need to have access to boxes. So I think there's a lot of, I think it's kind of the beginning steps of maybe something more interesting that's coming a little bit later. But, still, for those of us who've had to do this on CLI, I think it's a huge savings of time, which is great.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive savings because I ran into the same thing when, a Terraform apply worked, but then we were missing the state file because somebody didn't set up a backend properly, and we were importing, 500 resources, and we got down to the rules, and then there was a very long afternoon of copy pasting, figuring out what the rules were to where, and how to put it in the, ridiculous format that Terraform has had to do to import it. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how actually Terraform actually can leverage this too.
Well, as you guys know, Amazon forked Elasticsearch in a hard fork a few months back, and we talked about it. And they talked about the challenges they have getting to an OpenSearch 1.0 release, which OpenSearch is their fork of Elasticsearch. And so they have now apparently finished that work with the official OpenSearch 1.0 release. So I expect we'll start seeing this in Elasticsearch service or OpenSearch service on AWS as well in the next few months. But this is the first production-ready version per AWS. In addition to being production-ready, they have multiple enhancements for it, including data streams, trace analytics, span filtering, report scheduling, and many more, as well as they invested pretty heavily in the CI/CD backend to be able to enable people to test and to contribute to the OpenSearch code much more easily, which is great. So there's an official blog post on the opensearch.org website, which is nice. I didn't know they had an actual dedicated site. And they did highlight some of the things as well around compatibility with APIs, ARM support, OpenSearch dashboards, all kinds of great stuff, and with many, many more things coming down the pipe in the future, including support for all ARM types, including Linux ARM, Mac OS ARM, Mac Windows 64, etc. So you can run OpenSearch anywhere, as well as additional security investments, including granular security for index state management via SAML, and several observability features like bucket level alerting, all coming very soon. So do check that out. They do have an open, dashboard of what their releases are going to be and what they're working on. And the next big release is going to be 1.1, which will come out on August 30, which will include improvements to anomaly detection and indexing pressure protection, which is interesting to me because indexing pressure is one of the biggest challenges with Elasticsearch.
You get the impression that Amazon is handling this open source project a little differently than, they've handled some previous moves. So they're definitely, investing in the community and definitely using this as a, at least like projecting their idea of what maybe open source development should look like. It's interesting. And I will continue to watch this one and see how it develops.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is that they've actually developed, a lot of the CI/CD for it. So what that should mean is they're able to, hopefully quickly iterate and actually enable the community to develop for it. And hopefully, things like EKS, where I feel like they're perpetually 6.8, feel like growing, not shrinking, even though they stated a long time ago they were going to try to shrink that gap. Hopefully they can get people to develop and get the code out quickly. And I think that will actually help, the community be excited for it, knowing, oh, I committed this feature and, oh, it's actually in there now in, a short time period versus in 6-8 months.
Yeah, it's a little political maneuvering too, since that was one of the key criticisms faced by Elastic was the open source contribution was a little less than ideal. Like you never had any visibility into that process. And sometimes you were just left in the dark answering the automated bot on whether or not you still cared about this PR. So, yeah. So it's a smart move.
I still haven't seen much talk about what they're doing about Beats, if they're going to fork Beats as well, because initially they were not going to, but then it sounded like Elasticsearch basically pulled the rug out from underneath them on that too. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that also get forked at some point in the future as well. All right. Well, if you have a ton of money that you spend on your Amazon bill, and for some reason you don't know how to earn interest or grow that money in a savings account, you can give it to Amazon, who will store it for you and put it in their deferred revenue bucket. Because they now allow you to prepay for your Amazon usage in advance and to pay for all your future invoices. So once you add funds to Advance Pay, AWS will automatically use them to pay for your invoices when they become due for payment. Using Advanced Pay is easy. You can register Advanced Pay from the payments page of the Billing and Cost Management Console, and you'll provide it your banking route information, and then you can give Amazon your money for free with no interest. So there you go. Government agencies are super happy with this feature. That's the only people I can think of who have a situation where they have a budget. If they don't use it, they'll lose it. That's the only place where this probably makes sense. And if you are thinking about doing this, do talk to your financial team before committing your funds, because you get in a lot of trouble if they are not aware of what you're doing.
You think they would offer like some steep discount or something for paying in advance?
Well, that's the interesting thing. If you're doing an EDP and you're prepaying on an EDP, they do give you some discounts, but there was no mention of that if you're using this feature. So I'm sure there's a use case somewhere where somebody just like, I just want to put money in the account, not worry about it. But that's not my use case.
I know someone asked for it. I just want to go find whoever that is and ask them a series of questions.
Right.
Well, AWS is lowering the data processing charge for Private Link, which is great. Effective July 1st, the new pricing tiers go into effect. And so if you are using a private link to enable access to AWS services without using a NAT gateway or internet gateway, you can now get a discount. If you're using more than basically 1 petabyte to 4 petabytes per month, you'll get a discount from a penny per gigabyte to 6/100ths of a penny for up to 4 petabytes, and anything over 4 petabytes will cost you only 4/100ths of a penny. So there you go. So this is just some customer saying, hey, we're sending a lot of data through private link. We want a discount versus paying just a penny per gig for everything.
Which makes sense because they, a couple of weeks or months ago, can't keep tracking COVID time, they added the S3 endpoint versus the S3 gateway. And I have a couple of customers that are like, we need this right now. And I'm like sitting here going, you're going to pay more than if you use the gateway. But if you're going to argue with me for hours about it, then sure, why not? We'll help you set that up. But at least now in theory, they'll get a little bit of savings, where before they were paying that flat rate of a cent per gigabyte.
Especially, which is annoying because most of the time that traffic traverses the Amazon network and stays in the Amazon network. So it was always kind of annoying to pay that anyways. But to see a reduction in price there, I think is always good. Well, a feature that is all about solving a security problem with no mention of the security problem it solves has come out with the Amazon CloudFront APIs to locate and move alternate domain names or CNAMEs. So basically, these two new APIs for CloudFront are available, including list conflicting aliases and associate alias, which help locate and move alternate domain names if you encounter the CNAME already exist error code. These new APIs let you see which distribution has a CNAME and move the CNAME to a target distribution as long as the source distribution is in the same account, or if the source distribution is another account that is disabled. To move a CNAME between accounts where the source distribution is still enabled, you must contact AWS support and follow the steps. The list conflicting alias API allows you to identify a given CNAME, either a specific subdomain or a wildcard, and return a list of CNAMEs that match or overlap that CNAME. The API also returns corresponding but partially obfuscated information with the distribution ID and account ID where each CNAME is located to facilitate follow-up investigations. The associate alias API enables you to move a given CNAME to target distribution as long as the two distributions are in the same account or the source distribution is disabled, as I mentioned before. In addition to these new APIs, the introduction of the domain validation in April 2019, CloudFront no longer returns the CNAME already exists error code in scenarios involving a cross-account wildcard CNAME. For example, now you can have a wildcard CNAME such as star.example.com on a distribution account A and a specific subdomain such as test.example.com on a distribution account B, which is all about solving the number one hacker rank vulnerability, which is they find hanging CNAME records and then create sites in CloudFront and or S3 static website hosting and then spoof you and use your site for phishing. So terrible use case. It's all over the place. And so this is just Amazon silently fixing a major security flaw.
Yeah. The associate alias is interesting because that means that you can scan for all those, disconnected resources and then just park it, right? So you can map to your own distribution and so it'd be kind of funny to set up your own internal sort of page, maybe shaming, I don't know, clean up your infrastructure. I've got a couple ideas.
And I just deleted that Terraform state and I lost track of it. Sorry.
It actually is useful, not just for hacking and, annoying other people, but we had a customer that was doing a migration from, their www.client.com to, a new CloudFront with a whole new set of rules as they redid all their backend. And essentially when we did the cutover, we had to remove it, point it to the actual load balancer temporarily, in the meantime, so modify the DNS, move everything, and then put CloudFront back in front of it. So it was like a 3-step process to move it, where it looks like that this would actually enable you to solve the process. So it cleans up some operational overhead of, moving records from one to the other or CNAMEs from one to the other.
Well, if you are all about this local zone, you now have two new ones, which includes the Dallas and Philadelphia zones. These are both associated to the US East 1 region. Again, I was questioning why they're only on US East 1, but I realized when I looked at the website that they're only going to US East 1 or US West 2. There's nothing planned to go to US East 2. So if you enjoyed the burning dumpster fire of US East 1, you can now extend it to your local zone and lose control to your access to your local zone. So there you go.
What could go wrong?
Only everything. All right. Amazon SQS has a birthday today. 15 years and still queuing. Well done pun there by Jeff.
Nice.
Jeff Barr. It was announced originally in 2006 with the production launch and is one of the oldest services after S3. Last week, we talked about the Prime Day volume that it did 47.7 million messages per second, which is just absolutely crazy. And it was fun to kind of go down memory lane. There was a timeline here of some of the highlights of SQS, things that I just think are just part of it at this point because it's been so long. But in 2009, SQS launched in Europe. 3 years after it launched in the US, with the launch of Access Policy Language, which was the underpinnings of IAM. So, if you hate IAM, you can blame SQS for that. So, in 2010, it was one of the first services to get a free tier. In 2013, it got an increased payload to 256 kilobytes and a 50% price reduction. In 2014, it got dead letter queues, which I thought was there almost on release. So the fact that it came almost 8 years later kind of blew my mind. And then FIFO queues in 2016, encryption on the server side in 2017 with cost allocation tags, 1-minute metrics in 2021, and tiered pricing and high throughput mode for FIFO all coming this year as well. So a lot of use cases for SQS. If you are not just trying to go to Kafka because you like complexity, SQS is your solution.
Yeah, no, this just makes me feel old. These services that I'm using are, in the double digits of age. But yeah, no, I love the milestones. I think that's a cool add to the blog post because it does sort of jog the memory on like, oh yeah, I remember when that came out.
Or it didn't have it. That's the part that always kind of blows my mind. I never remember not having that. But again, I think most of us have really gotten into cloud in the last 8 or 9 years. So 2006, most of us weren't even thinking cloud.
Yeah,
it was a fad. Sure. It was a fad of the hippies were doing.
I remember my boss talking to me about using AWS in 2011. I was like, but there's no security. Everything just has to be open to the world. And we're doing corporate IT and everything needs to be behind our firewall because that's where it needs to be for security because we're a compliant related company. So, now it's like the world has flipped on its head and everything I said back in 2011 was 100% wrong.
Well, that was back in the days of classic VPC too, right? Where, the whole dream was you're just going to use security groups for everything. And, could you imagine the complexity of some of the infrastructures now if you just had security groups and no VPCs? It would never have worked.
I did remember doing a EC2 Classic to EC2 VPC migration. I did 2 of them. Both of them we just did in the Big Bang because it was before they released the connector. So it ended up having to do everything all at once.
Well, we're going to pause here for an ad as Matt maybe goes and deals with his dog for 2 seconds.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
All right, moving on to GCP. They have announced the general availability of the Certificate Authority Service, or Google Cloud CAS, because that's not a terrible name. Google Cloud CAS provides a highly scalable and available private CA to address the unprecedented growth in certificates in the digital world. And since going into preview in October, several customers have tried it out with very positive things, including Jason Roberts, security engineer at Credit Karma. Credit Karma, security is a top priority, and we always seek ways to improve our security posture. One area where we have been working with Google for more than a year now is identity of our workloads and how we can leverage platform features to offload to cloud some of the time-consuming tasks that our security and DevOps teams need to run today. We're very happy with progress that GCP has made in addressing our feedback, and we believe CA service is a fundamental piece of building a strong identity story in the cloud. So there you go. Features in the class for the GA, CA rotation, where they basically allow you to rotate your CA before the certificate expires with a pool functionality, which is actually pretty neat. I don't think I've seen that from other vendors. More control over certificate issuance policy with the GA. They're enhancing their policy to allow per user group policies to be defined. Additional features including a Terraform provider for Google Cloud CAS, which is always great. Certificate Manager now works with Google Cloud CAS and works with JetStack to create an integration with CertManager.io for fully automated lifecycle management with Kubernetes. They also have built in a Vault plugin that allows the use of Vault to be the source of policies and Google Cloud CAS to be the certificate issuer. And if you're curious about how to make all this work, they give you some great quick labs capabilities as well. Pricing is simple as the pay-as-you-go model with a 99.9% SLA.
It's pretty good and very competitive to the Amazon equivalent offering. both in terms of price and functionality. That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like the CA rotation feature. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I don't know that Amazon has a way to do that without having some interruption when you need to rotate your root keys.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, Cloud SQL for MySQL is launching IAM database authentication. This basically allows you to use your IAM credentials to access your IAM database, which is a great zero trust model opportunity. And so this is great to see. We've seen this on other cloud providers as well. Cloud IAM admins can reduce the administrative effort associated with managing passwords for each Cloud SQL's database because it's all tied to Google login.
Can't wait to see this on the first security report next week of, hey, this isn't enabled and you're not using this in your application yet.
Turns out it's a lot harder to get those database credentials out of your source code. So,
it's very
lots
difficult.
of reviews.
It's not something that, .NET or different things expected would be, something you would want to dynamically grab at runtime. So they put them in, INI files and like, well, that INI file is not going to be something that's accessed from the internet. And then it gets misconfigured or, your server gets hacked and then the password's in the file. So it's not good either. So, initially when they designed it, it made sense, but reality is it's not good practice. Moving on to Azure. If you're looking to enhance your cloud skills and accelerate your digital transformation, Azure has the new Azure for IT capability. It's a new online technical skilling program with resources designed for cloud professionals of all skill levels. Using the new resources to stay current on Azure best practices and get your questions answered by their technical experts so you can transform IT ops to drive business growth and innovation. Inside Azure for IT gives you access to Ask the Expert sessions where their experts answer your most difficult cloud infrastructure questions, plus expert series videos that dive even deeper into best practices and demos. So I like to sign up for this and ask, why would I choose Azure exactly? and then once they answer that question, I like to ask them, so which storage tier do I use? Ultra premium? Like what's the over under on getting fired if I don't choose the ultra premium?
Well, how thick is your wallet is going to be their answer.
Sure, of course.
If it's very thick, then you got to do the ultra premium blob storage.
I mean, for IT, there's really only 2 players in the game, and so if you're already on Office 365, like this is how I think they get a lot of new customers, especially in IT departments and companies, because you're already using it effectively, and so now it's just expanding on that.
Well, don't they also give a lot of credits too? I feel like a lot of times when I hear that you sign up for O365 or you get whatever their EDP pricing, they call it something. That you're able to, that they give you Azure credits to utilize too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Part of their enterprise agreements, they give you lots of Azure credits. I mean, Microsoft's been big on enterprise agreements forever. So that's how they sell you SQL Server too at millions of dollars per year. So they might as well give you some Azure for free.
I mean, hopefully they get some more people that actually know their environments. I mean, that knows Azure because they are, still not as widely used as Amazon. So hopefully that they're able to get, more people that know it and get more hype around it and get more people up to date on their skills so that they're able to expand their cloud and keep competing.
That growth has been
what I don't want to see is one just company that rules it all. And I think having at least the 3 of them right now, and if you want to throw in Oracle, we can call it 4, at least competing with each other and pushing each other to innovate.
I mean, the nice thing is Microsoft has been solid number 2 and they've been growing pretty fast. They don't break out their cloud revenue directly, but, for all intents and purposes, it looks like they're growing at a faster clip than Amazon is right now, which is partially a problem of big numbers because it's hard to, multiply billions of dollars per year at that level of growth. But, 45% is pretty standard for Azure. 30% is pretty standard for Amazon right now. But, continues to grow. They continue to keep everyone on their toes. And Google's out there as a, distant third, but a very aggressive distant third with a very good offering. So it is still fun days in the cloud space. It's not Amazon's it's really Amazon's to lose, I'd say at this point.
I'm just wondering why we don't have a section for Evoke. No, that's going to be edited.
We talked about Evoke last week. We talked about the announcement.
Where's Evoke in there? In our multi-generational
infrastructure.
Yeah. MGI.
All right. Well, next up is you can accelerate big data analytics with the Spark 3.0 connector for SQL Server, because that makes a lot of sense that you would attach Spark to SQL Server. Azure is announcing the GA of Spark 3.0, compatible Apache Spark connector for SQL Server and Azure SQL, accessible via Maven. The Spark 3.0 compatible connector went into preview earlier this year, and since then they have seen tremendous customer adoption and received helpful customer feedback. The Apache Spark connector for SQL Server is a high-performance connector that enables users to use transactional data in big data analytics and persist results for ad hoc queries for reporting. So basically saying, use that Spark stuff to do the query, but then dump it all into SQL. Great. Notable features and benefits from the connector: compatible, of course, with Spark 3.0. Support for all Apache Spark bindings, including Scala, Python, and R. And then basic authentication, AD key tab, and Azure Active Directory support.
So you'd be surprised how much that use case of dumping the big data job results into a database is like, it's very common.
It is very common.
It cracks me up. It's just another sort of indication that SQL rules the world, because that's the technology and the language that everyone's familiar with working with. And so it immediately goes into some sort of relational database.
Well, think about how many NoSQL databases that everyone wants to query with SQL, and
that's how you know,
many shims.
That's how you know it arrived
to make it work.
That's how you know all NoSQL arrived, is it gets the SQL interface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a true NoSQL solution until it has a SQL implementation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you're thinking about doing privileged identity management with Azure Lighthouse, it now enables the ability to do zero trust as well. Microsoft, of course, investing heavily in Azure Lighthouse, and Azure Lighthouse makes it easier for service providers to automate their management of customer infrastructure. At the same time, it provides a fine-grained access control that places the customer in charge of which resources are available to which service provider. So this is a great opportunity for someone like Foghorn who needs to access something in your account. They would request that via the Lighthouse interface, and then basically that get approved by the customer. That all then allows them to be able to access it either permanently or on some least privilege opportunity, and it's temporary credentials, just like you do with any other SSO type implementation.
It would be nice. I don't know if it has it or not. I haven't honestly read the blog post too deeply, but one of the features I've seen, I don't know who it is, has it, where you can create somebody a role they can assume, and yes, it's SSO based, so it's time based, but then also it automatically removes that whole permission set after so long. So you can give somebody, a key, your keys are good for an hour, but, the whole permission set's only good for, 7 days. So at the end of those 7 days, that whole role moves away, which is, very useful when you're debugging something. You can give somebody access for a period of time, and knowing that you already put the kill switch in there in case you forget to actually remove it in advance.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Azure doesn't have something like that, because they have a lot of ML AI to fix security groups and firewall policies for not being used. But yeah, I'm not sure who that might be at this point. Well, if you're using VMware on Azure, you now have the ability to leverage Azure Disk Storage with Azure Pools. With this announcement, you can gain flexibility of your data needs with a scalable and cost-effective cloud storage for your VMware. This pool is an Azure service that surfaces an Internet Small Computer Systems Interface, or iSCSI, endpoint for all underlying disks. And then you connect that disk to your VMware data store and create VMDK and VMFS file systems on top of that. This is a great use case for data-intensive workloads that need a lot of data throughput and disaster recovery solutions as well. So I think we talked about this when Oracle, I did a thing on Oracle and spun up a server that it was really cool. They had iSCSI. I didn't realize that Azure had iSCSI as well. I'm not sure if this is available to all services or this is just available to VMware, but having an iSCSI endpoint makes a lot of really cool use cases enabled from SQL Server to all kinds of stuff. So great to see this in VMware, but overall, it's a great service in general.
Yeah, so today I learned not only does Azure have an iSCSI thing, I learned what iSCSI stands for, which I never knew until just now. I did not know that. Yeah.
I didn't know until he read it. That was actually going to be my comment. I learned what iSCSI stood for today.
I never knew it stood for either. It was news to me when I read the show notes earlier today too. I was like, I didn't know that. Yeah. So yeah, good. Well, Matt, we're going to put the burden of running us through lightning round on you once again. So I know you learned last time that's a very hard job. Sarah, you can mock him mercilessly if he messes this up. But as typical rules of this work, there are no rules. And we're just going to comment something hopefully funny about each of the headlines that we have chosen here that we did not feel like talking about at length in the main show. That is the way the lightning round typically works. So Matt, good luck to you.
Thank you. All right, we'll start. AWS Cloud Map supports configuring negative caching for DNS queries.
That's about how I feel about Matt reading the show notes. Pretty negative.
Wow.
Starting off strong.
Just all out attacking.
Brutal.
AWS organization increases quotas for tag policies.
I mean, he already missed one. He's doing great.
I was going to jump around
just to mess with
you guys to make sure you're actually paying attention.
No. This is a new dynamic to the game that I'm not familiar with.
Your quota for missing headlines has, been increased. That's all I got.
I'm going to tag the headlines as we go through them.
Did we mention that the funny aspect was in air quotes?
Yeah.
Amazon Text Extract announces improvements to detect. Wow, no, we're just going to skip that one.
What?
Amazon Textract announces improvements to detection of handwritten text, digits, dates, and phone numbers.
Challenge accepted. If it can understand what I'm writing down when I'm using pen to paper, good luck.
I mean, if it could remind me what I was talking about when I wrote the note, that would help me out even more, because I typically, once I can decipher my own handwriting, I then don't know what the note actually meant. So that's my bigger problem.
Yeah, man, if we can automate that, we could basically automate our ways out of existence. We could just drink Mai Tais all day. That'd be fantastic.
It'd be awesome.
Amplify Flutter now supports null safety.
That's how I feel about this feature. I null all understanding of it.
Yeah, I've heard of safety third. I have not heard of null safety. That's pretty awesome.
Somebody needs to play the safety dance.
Nice.
AWS Shield Advanced no longer requires AWS WAF logging.
Although when you have a security incident, they'll no longer be able to help you because you turned off the logging.
Yeah, that one's a little bit of a struggle. But, Shield Advanced is already a little bit of a black box to most people.
AWS Lambda now supports Amazon MQ for RabbitMQ as an event source.
I mean, a venting system that uses an eventing source? Huh, weird.
Wait for Lambda to sort of ruin the SQS quinceanera by no, we're going to support this other queuing service. Me.
Amazon Kendra releases web crawler to enable web search.
Oh, 1998 called.
Website search. 1998
called.
So wait, the search engine is going to be able to query websites. You don't say.
So weird. And then you can put in your HD access file that you don't want their web crawler to crawl your site.
No robots.
Because it's taking down your site, when it crawls your site because your system can't support it. Yeah, 1998 called, and we're back there again.
Wow. Everything old is new again.
Amazon announces new AWS deep learning containers to deploy Hugging Face models faster on Amazon SageMaker.
I'm always in support of Hugging Face faster.
Nice. Unless it's an alien hugging face, then you probably don't want that to be too fast because you want to get away,
or at least end it quickly. I don't know. I can go either way on that one.
I feel like you left this in there just to see if I could say it with a straight face.
I wrote this journal. I didn't know you were going to be doing it, so it was really more about trolling Peter. But last time
the opportunity,
yeah, and then this new opportunity arose that we get to troll you instead. So that works out well.
Yeah, I was doing this till about 2 hours ago.
Yeah, that's why we roll here at the Cloud Pod, on your toes. For listeners of the Cloud Pod, you know that I have no love for Microsoft Active Directory, which is why I'm excited to tell you about the leading cloud directory platform, JumpCloud. JumpCloud makes it easy to solve today's IT challenges by unifying device and user management through a single pane of glass, enabling you to securely manage your users and devices and perform common tasks like onboarding and offboarding remote workers. With JumpCloud, you no longer need to implement an on-premise Active Directory infrastructure or additional tooling to scope a user's access, and you can ensure that the user is coming from trusted devices and networks. Enabling JumpCloud's Zero Trust solutions improves the security and compliance of your network, ensuring users have access only to the services they need when they need them. To start your organization's move to a modern, secure hybrid work model, try JumpCloud for free today at cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. That's cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod.
AWS Storage Gateway adds support for AWS Private Link for Amazon S3 and Amazon S3 Access Endpoints.
Oh, we found why we needed the cost savings above, because that's going to get expensive.
Yeah, then we can double dip on the services and pay twice.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amazon.
But we're giving you a discount so you won't feel so bad about it.
But only above 1 petabyte.
Well, trust me, with Amazon Storage Gateway, you're going to be above 1 petabyte.
AWS Firewall Manager now supports central monitoring of VPC routes for AWS Network Firewall.
So you know that network problem that you didn't know you had? Now you can see it.
Well, and worse, now the security person knows that you have the problem because they're the ones who use Firewall Manager.
AWS System Manager Application Manager now supports full lifecycle management of AWS CloudFormation templates and stacks.
Okay, I'm just going to put that in my null safety from earlier. Because, wow, that's a lot of words.
They need to manage the lifecycle of that stupid name and retire that.
Did I get all
yeah, that's it? Yep. I mean, it was hard to track because of your randomization. I was like, I don't know where he's going.
Hey, you invited me last second. I'm going to mess with you guys a little bit. It's the way this goes.
Yeah, no, it's an extra challenge. I love it.
I feel like I should give the point to Sarah because she, really came out strong on doing this.
Great. Chuckles here, there, and
yeah. Not quite prepared for this one. Need a little more than 5 minutes.
Okay, next time you'll get 7.
So you've been given, 2 months now before
I'll
Reinforce?
have to prepare for that.
Yeah, just be prepared. We'll talk about it and things coming up once Matt awards a point. And you can't give it to Sarah. Sorry.
All right, I'll give it to Ryan.
Yes.
He seems like he's having a sad day.
Pity point. I will take it.
Well, he has a Christmas shirt on, so
This is how bad it is on laundry. I am right now. Is I do have a Christmas shirt on.
I noticed that earlier.
It is that low. I'm like, I really have to do laundry now.
It's like, I love it. It's awesome. Is that Pac-Man like eating Christmas trees? Is that a Pac-Man Christmas bulb?
I feel like when you guys send this out, you need to send a picture of Ryan's shirt so everyone understands this.
I will try to find a picture for the show notes. Yeah.
All right. Well, there are things coming up once again. We won't mention the Security Summit because it's coming out the day that we launch this episode out. So, but hopefully, maybe Sarah will be at the Google Cloud Security Summit on July 20th, the virtual one, of course. And then on the following week, the Retail and Consumer Goods Summit will be happening on the Google Cloud space. I don't think they've updated their blog post. They keep lying to us that it's frequently updated. It's occasionally updated is how I would describe it. At this point, yeah, nothing new at this point. That'll be available for you on demand, though. If you did miss the Security Summit, I'm sure it'll be available on the website shortly after that. AWS Reinforce is rapidly approaching. We are just about a month and a week away from everyone boiling in Houston. And so that is everyone's going to look forward to that. And then, of course, reInvent coming up in November, as usual, after Thanksgiving, which is always great. That's all I've got, but I think some of our guest hosts here have some additional things coming up that they'd like to share.
Is the rodeo going to be at reInvent at the same time as it was like last year?
Typically it's the week after, but I didn't look that up.
Because that was awesome.
I always like the intermix of, the reInvent crowd that's leaving Vegas and the rodeo people coming in. It is a fun time.
It's December 2nd through the 11th. So yes, it is. Do you guys want to share your things coming up?
Yeah, so SneakCon 2021 is a free virtual conference that's coming up October 5th through the 7th. So go ahead and check that out. They're going to talk about the roadmap, and they're going to do some deep dives on in training as well as regulatory stuff.
So you said it as SneakCon. So you think that's sneak? So I see it as snake.
Well,
And then I heard someone say snake the other day on how to pronounce this. So I think the first part of their conference should be just explaining how to say their name properly.
Well, I did Google it recently because I wasn't sure either. I've heard it snake, sneak, but apparently one of the co-founders calls it sneak. How you get sneak out of that, I'm not entirely sure.
I kind of can see it. And if I squint at it, I kind of get where sneaky and security kind of play together. So I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Now
you know.
Now I know for the future.
Now you know.
Now I know. Learn something new. Worth you being on the show just to explain that to me. Matt, do you have something coming up?
Yeah, HashiConf is coming up in October. I think it's October 19th through 22nd. And I'm always just excited to see what HashiCorp comes out with, with all their new tools and their platforms they're building. And I'm always just curious to see where their next products are going.
I'm curious to see if they come up with something new this year because they kind of came out of nowhere last year with Boundary, which was pretty awesome. So curious to see how that.
Do you know anyone using it?
No, I mean, it just hit the point where it was really even beta testable at like .2. I think they have .3 out now. So it's, I would like to play with it. Apparently Slack is getting a new feature where you're going to be able to share video, like kind of like you do in Discord. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Discord, but Discord's for gamers. But you can basically do a screen share and kind of like a live Twitch streaming kind of thing, but right outside in Discord. So you'll be able to do that in Slack. So, it may be something that I'd try actually and do a Slack share when that feature comes available to Slack for the CloudPod room. So you can watch me stumble through trying to make Boundary work and read the documentation and comment about the documentation in real live time because I've never tried it and I'm curious how it goes. So we'll see. Well, that's awesome.
I'm looking forward to the real time dump of Justin getting frustrated at a service.
Yeah, a real live Justin is a thing. So there you go. So something for our listeners if you're on our Slack channel to check out. Yeah. Well, thanks guys for joining us on Last Minute. We appreciate both of you for joining us and adding your contributions. We would love to have you guys on again. I know we'll have Sarah on for Reinforce, for all her security insights and all things they're going to do at Reinforce. Actually, I did forget about the Amazon Summits. So apparently, we thought Summit season was over, but apparently they're doing a second round of summits this summer, and they actually scheduled the US one at the same time as the Reinforce Summit. So apparently they don't have a lot of confidence in Reinforce, and so they're doing a AWS Summit at the same time, virtual event, of course, in August 24th through the 26th is the Summit online. So I don't know what that's about. That was a little weird. Kind of came out of left field, and I thought we were already out of Summit season. So slightly strange. Maybe Reinforce is expanding its thought process a little bit. So,
hopefully they took some of our feedback into account last year, right? And they do a little more technical deep dives and not so high level.
Well, that was 2 years ago, so they've completely forgotten all of our feedback because last year was COVID year.
Oh, that's true. Last year was COVID. Jeez.
It was the before times.
The before the COVID Reinforce in Massachusetts.
Yes, which was awesome. And then they moved it to Houston in August, which is never good.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for coming, and we'll talk to you guys all next week here at the Cloud Pod.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
thanks.
And that is the Week in the Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Foghorn Consulting and Jump Cloud. Check out our website, the home of the Cloud Pod, where you can join our newsletter, Slack team, and send feedback or ask questions at thecloudpod.net, or tweet us with the hashtag #thecloudpod.